Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Authorities in the Australian state of Queensland say that a 35-year-old man is in custody this week following a dramatic car chase down a busy highway. One that apparently ended with the suspect stopping to take a selfie before being placed under arrest. The whole thing started at around 11:30 a.m. on February 14th, when police were called about a domestic violence disturbance at a home in the suburb of Mountain Creek in the Sunshine Coast region. It's unclear exactly what that incident involved, though it appears that by the time officers arrived, a 35-year-old man involved in the situation had fled the scene in a red Mitsubishi SUV. Once on the road, the suspect began traveling north on the Bruce Highway, where he reportedly began driving recklessly. Witnesses say that he caused a series of near accidents, at one point going airborne after hitting 2 speed bumps at a high rate of speed. It's alleged that he also attempted to steal a truck, which was left immobilized on the highway, causing a major backlog of traffic. The situation continued for more than 2 hours as police attempted to chase down the suspect. According to reports, at least 20 police vehicles were involved in the pursuit, as well as a helicopter which tracked the situation from the air. The chase finally came to an end at around 2 p.m. in Noosa, about 18 miles from where it first began. The 35-year-old pulled over after negotiating with police and was taken into custody, though apparently not before sneaking in a selfie as officers surrounded him and placed him in handcuffs. At the time of this recording, police say that they are still investigating the situation and have not released any motive behind the crime. Of particular interest is a handgun that was found in the suspect's car, which authorities stated may be a replica. So far, the 35-year-old's name has not been released, and he currently remains in custody, awaiting charges. The family of a Colombian-American woman are reportedly desperate for answers this week, following her sudden and suspicious disappearance from the apartment where she was staying on an extended trip to Spain. The whole thing started back on February 5th, when a friend of 40-year-old Anna Knezovich sounded the alarm when she failed to meet up with her in the Spanish city of Barcelona. Anna, who had been going through a tough divorce with her husband David, had decided to take an extended trip to Spain in December and had been staying in Madrid for the past couple of months. When word of Anna's absence made its way back to her family in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, they immediately contacted authorities in Spain as well. It turned out that they had already been concerned about her well-being for a couple of days. Family members stated that they had last heard from Anna on February 2nd when they received 2 strange text messages from her phone. The messages were written in Spanish, but according to her brother, Felipe Henao, they didn't sound like her at all. The word choice and grammar was bizarre, not at all like Anna, who was a native Spanish speaker originally from Colombia. Instead, Felipe said the text looked like it had been run through Google Translate or something. Equally as strange as the composition of the messages was their content. When translated to English, they read, quote, "I met someone wonderful. He has a summer house about 2 hours from Madrid. We are going there now and I will spend a few days there. Signal is spotty. I'll call you when I get back. Yesterday after therapy, I needed a walk and he approached me on the street. Amazing connection, like I never had before." Things only got more concerning when the family had someone travel over to the apartment where Anna had been staying. They were apparently able to get access to the building's surveillance video, which revealed that a mysterious man in a helmet had visited the residence the night before those messages were sent. The man could be seen spray painting over security cameras in the elevator and outside the building. At the time of this recording, Spanish authorities are looking into Anna's disappearance, and there are fears that this unknown man in the helmet may be responsible for kidnapping her. However, Anna's family has expressed concerns over the investigation, saying that they fear Spanish police do not have the resources that they need. In an interview, Felipe stated, quote, "I've heard from the police in Spain. I know they're working really hard. I just don't know if they have all the tools they need. I found out that they don't even have a detective that speaks English, and that makes it really tough, and I find that ridiculous. I wish there was more collaboration between the US and the Spanish law enforcement. This is an American citizen that is missing abroad, and I just want my sister back." Right now, little additional information is available about Anna's life in the lead up to her disappearance, including the details of her divorce. Reports do state, though, that authorities believe her husband David is currently in his home country of Serbia. Anna's friends, meanwhile, claim that she is not the type to suddenly disappear. They say that she is, quote, not the party girl type, and that she doesn't drink or use drugs. At the time of this recording, the disturbing situation is still under investigation. Authorities in Switzerland say that a suspect is dead this week following a dramatic hostage incident aboard a light rail train that ended with police storming the vehicle after hours of failed negotiations. According to reports, the incident unfolded on the evening of February 8th when the train in question was traveling from Yverdon-les-Bains to Beaume, located in the west of the country. The train had just stopped at a station in the town of Essert-sous-Champvent, about halfway between the two municipalities at 6:35 p.m., when suddenly, things took a terrifying turn. A man, later identified as a 32-year-old Iranian national, announced that he was taking all 13 passengers hostage, as well as the light rail engine's conductor. The man was armed with an axe, a hammer, and a knife. Despite tying up some of the victims, police were apparently quickly alerted about what was going on by others who called emergency services with their cell phones. Soon, the entire station had been shut down, and the train had been surrounded by at least 60 officers, including members of a special Swiss police unit. Hostage negotiators were also brought in, at least one of whom spoke in Farsi with the Iranian suspect. Communications with the suspect reportedly lasted for nearly 4 hours, until it became clear that no progress was going to be made. At 10:15 p.m., police stormed the train, using stun grenades to try and give them a momentary edge over the 32-year-old. According to police, he still tried to attack them, and though less lethal methods were tried at first, eventually they were forced to fire due to concerns about the safety of the hostages. The suspect was struck and killed by gunfire during the exchange, though thankfully it appears that none of the hostages were injured. While many questions remain about the incident, Swiss authorities say that they do not currently believe the attack had a terror-related motive. Instead, they say that the man, who they have identified only as a 32-year-old Iranian asylum seeker, was allegedly motivated by his, quote, insistence on having contact with a member of staff at an asylum center. According to one Swiss news outlet, police had been forced to intervene at this center on previous occasions due to the man's behavior there. At the time of this recording, the situation is still officially under investigation. A 34-year-old Englishman has reportedly been banned from driving as well as handed a large chunk of community service hours following a recent incident in which he was caught for drunk driving after deciding to take a nap in the middle of the road. According to reports, the whole thing started in the early morning hours of January 28th when officers from the Cambridgeshire Police were on patrol near the town of Godmanchester. It was around 4:15 a.m. and they were driving down the A1307, a divided 2-lane highway, when they spotted a car that was sitting in the middle of the road. At first, officers thought the car was broken down, so they pulled over to offer the motorist some assistance. However, when they got up to the driver's side window of the vehicle, a Mercedes C220, they realized what was actually going on. The man inside, later identified as 34-year-old Emmanuel Osai, was taking a nap. He still had his seatbelt on, and the vehicle's engine was running. Understandably, police suspected that Emmanuel might have been under the influence of alcohol, so after some questions, they asked him to submit to a roadside test, one which he did not pass.
Hello mate, you alright? Yeah. Can you open the door for me please? What's up sir?
Oh, it's a little bit tight, that's right. Looking, I'm rested.
You're parked and you're rested in the middle of a dual carriageway?
Oh no, not this one.
Have you had any alcohol this evening? Yes.
Yes.
Right. You're in the middle of the road. This isn't a lay-by.
Yeah.
You're in the middle of the road. And this is a junction, and yours just stops here. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, stop. Okay, so you failed.
I love that bit at the end there. you failed. Anyway, all jokes aside, thankfully no one was hurt as a result of this incident. Emmanuel has since pleaded guilty to drunk driving and was handed a 3.5-year driving ban as well as 120 hours of community service. Authorities in the Mexican state of Quintana Roo say that a New York man is alive and safe this week, following a terrifying ordeal in which he was allegedly kidnapped by a group of armed men and left in the middle of the jungle. According to reports, the whole thing started sometime on February 4th, when 35-year-old Joseph Constantine Bonencontri was ambushed at his home by a group of unknown assailants. Though a native of New York, the 35-year-old reportedly owns a home in the remote town of Limones, which is where the alleged attack took place. After disappearing from his residence, Joseph was reported missing, prompting a search that lasted for 3 days. It finally came to an end on the afternoon of February 6th, when locals tipped off police and National Guard members about a suspicious taxi that they had seen in the area. The taxi was full of men with weapons and was seen pulling into an opening in a remote section of jungle off of a road. When authorities arrived in the area, they found Joseph, who was sitting in a small hut in a clearing in the dense vegetation. His eyes had been taped shut, his wrists and ankles were also bound with tape, and he was holding on to a water bottle. Unfortunately, the suspects responsible had apparently fled, leaving behind only some rifle ammunition, a bulletproof vest, and a small amount of marijuana. While the case is still under investigation at the present time, and it appears no arrests have been made, authorities say that they believe the case had a straightforward motivation. The unknown men who took Joseph hostage were allegedly trying to get a $200,000 ransom from him. Joseph was not physically injured during the harrowing ordeal, and he apparently told police he did not know the people who had taken him captive. The situation is still developing. Authorities in the Thai capital of Bangkok say that they have arrested a prolific thief this week, one with a rather bizarre specialty: women's underwear. According to reports, the whole thing started on the evening of February 11th when a woman in Bangkok's Bangkok Noi district filed a complaint at a local police station. She said that she had hung her laundry out to dry earlier that day at her first-floor apartment, but when she went to retrieve her items, some of her underwear was missing. The woman was baffled because she said she had an anti-theft screen around her balcony. Police launched an investigation and were quickly able to figure out what had happened after reviewing surveillance video taken at the scene. In it, a man could be seen wedging his hand through a small gap in the mesh screen and grabbing some of the underwear off of the woman's balcony. Additional security footage provided further clues. As they watched the perpetrator walk away, police realized that he was actually a resident of that same building, 38-year-old Natawut Songchai. To their surprise, when police paid a visit to Natawut, they quickly learned that this incident was only the tip of the iceberg. Inside his apartment were 516 bras, 72 pairs of panties, and 3 sets of pajamas. Once officers got the 38-year-old talking, it turned out that he had quite a lot to say. For starters, he said these roughly 600 pieces of women's undergarments were far from the only ones he had stolen. In fact, he had been doing this for 20 years. Natawut explained that his fascination with women's underwear began when he was 18 years old and he was working construction in the province of Samut Sakhon. At night, he would sneak out of his company living quarters, after which he would steal 2 to 6 pairs of underwear per night. Though Natawut said that he managed to keep this hidden from his co-workers and pretty much everyone else for quite some time, there had been some close calls over the years. At one point, about 10 years ago, he said he had been caught by one of his victims, but he made a deal with her to avoid arrest. After that, he went right back to stealing. At the time of this recording, it's unclear exactly what kind of penalty the 38-year-old is looking at, though so far he's been charged with trespassing and committing theft at night. He assured police, though, that whatever the result, after serving his sentence, this time he plans to stop stealing for good. A Chilean lottery winner's amazing luck apparently took a horrific turn last week when he was gunned down during a brazen robbery, a crime that police now allege was set up by one of his own family members. According to reports, it all started on February 6th when the victim, identified only as a 52-year-old merchant from the city of Quillota, took a trip to the bank with his partner and his nephew. In October of last year, he had won a 1 billion peso, or roughly $1 million US prize in the lottery, and that day he was going to make a withdrawal. The 52-year-old had just finished taking out the equivalent of about $31,000 and had gotten back into the car when suddenly he and his family members were approached by 3 attackers who demanded that he hand over the cash. A struggle ensued, and the lottery winner was shot in the leg, bleeding out and dying just minutes later. By the time police arrived at the scene, the robbers had fled, though it apparently didn't take long for a subsequent investigation to uncover the startling truth. During questioning, the man's nephew reportedly admitted that he had orchestrated the brazen daylight robbery and had set it up so that his uncle would be robbed at the bank. The reason was reportedly undisclosed money troubles he was having. At the time of this recording, the nephew, as well as one of the suspects, has been arrested and charged with robbery and murder. Police are still searching for the 2 other people who allegedly took part in the plot. So far, none of the names of anyone involved in the situation have been released. Authorities in Greece say that 4 people are dead this week, including the gunman, following a shooting at a shipping company that was allegedly carried out by a disgruntled former employee. The whole thing took place sometime on February 12th in the Athens suburb of Glyfada. It reportedly began when 76-year-old Egyptian national Adel El Borai broke into a building belonging to his former employer, a shipping company called European Navigation Inc. Once inside, he allegedly shot 3 people, 2 men and a woman, before barricading himself on the 2nd floor. When authorities arrived at the scene, they reportedly attempted to negotiate with Borai for several hours, though this apparently went nowhere. Eventually, these talks came to an end when the 76-year-old turned his weapon on himself. According to local news sources, the victims are Maria Carnesi, the owner of the company, as well as its managing director Antonis Velasquez and ship captain Ilias Koukoulas. These same sources state that the motive behind the crime was Borai's anger after recently being fired from the company. Apparently, he worked as a caretaker for several of the owner's properties before he was let go after 36 years. Witnesses at the scene told police they saw Borai run into the building right before he started firing, during which time he yelled, quote, "I've come to settle things." While the general motive behind the crime appears to have been more or less confirmed at this point, the actual details of Borai's termination and grievances are disputed. In particular, some local reports allege that in addition to his termination, what may have pushed Borai over the edge was a decision by the deceased company owner to kick him out of a house that he had been given to live in sometime during his many years of employment. However, the company apparently denies that this was the case. They also claim that Borai's firing wasn't all that recent, and that in fact he had been let go early last year. Unfortunately, right now it's unclear which version of events is actually true. The situation is still under investigation. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.